Staying in contact. I'm London Mitchell. As many of you know, I love the opportunity to highlight grassroots efforts. In my opinion, they are the foundation on which our system of government is built. In this installment, we are doing a follow-up discussion with Peggy Daly-Masternak, a leader of a grassroots effort to stop the widening of I-475 through her West Toledo neighborhood, arguing the widening is not needed and there are some health and environmental issues that are unwanted. Peggy's group has had some success in grabbing the ears of some very influential people, so I began the discussion with asking her about how she was able to organize a growing grassroots effort and why grassroots are so important.
I've been an activist for a long time in a number of different issues. Education. I really wanted to get military recruiters away from youth at the height of the Iraq War. Neighborhood issues, definitely. So oftentimes it's just finding like-minded people. One person gave me really good advice one time. You don't need to, in order to do really good, effective work, you don't need 1,000 people. Find one really good person that you can find commonality with. We think on top of each other. So if I come up with an idea and that person comes up with an expansion to that idea, then it goes really well. And that worked really effectively for me. Something like stopping a highway, you definitely need lots and lots of people, but a good core group of people who are really willing to work on the issue and stand up and speak publicly about it. It's not something that you need. You need people to show up when there's things like a hearing, definitely, and we do get that. But a good core group of people to work with is invaluable.
What do you say to someone to ignite that passion, to want to get involved, to want to make change? Are there certain steps to creating that message?
For me, I mean, I've been accused of being Don Quixote. I go after things that seem impossible to begin with. But when I lay my head down at night, I know that I've done what I could do to stop something that I truly believe is a harmful thing or won't be a benefit to my children and my grandchildren. Obviously, my gray hair tells you I'm not here for that much longer, but my children and my grandchildren are, and I want a legacy left for them that, number one, demonstrates you really can sometimes defeat some things that are negative, not everything, but you can defeat some things that are not beneficial. And number two, when it comes to things like highways, we are in the middle of a climate crisis, and this will be for them something that has to be more beneficial if we just rethink how we use the planet. And so it's a model for my children and grandchildren, is a large motivator for me. But I want good quality of life for my friends and neighbors too.
And this really is an expression of our system of government where people can get involved and speak their minds and make some change happen.
I agree. Um, we just had a success in our neighborhood just yesterday, when it was announced that a convenience store slash gas station slash restaurant that was being planned for the last prime corner of what used to be the Notre Dame property at Monroe and Secor, they pulled the application. And I think it had a lot to do with the fact that people stood up and said, it's a park-like setting. There are 2 senior housing residences there, a high school, a child care center, and a rehab hospital. How do you even propose to think that something that intense, a gas station, convenience store, restaurant, would fit in that environment? In addition to that, all the trees that would be destroyed, as well as it is redundant. We have all that I just mentioned in these commercial sectors where I live. I feel really bad for the people in the central city. They can barely find a good place to go get groceries. There's no grocery store, and they've been clamoring for a grocery store for 20 plus years. Give us a grocery store. We have to go out of our neighborhood. We have to get a bus or get in a car or whatever. We're forced into that to get a grocery store. Here in my neighborhood, it is like a gluttony of those things. It is on steroids. It's every single brand name chain restaurant from somewhere out of town that you can possibly think of is already located here. So the intensity of land use in my neighborhood, and then, you compare that to neighborhoods that don't have anything, any place to go get a bite to eat, any place to go get a grocery, go shopping, and if they're doing it, they're paying, really, really high prices at dollar stores and convenience stores. So it makes no sense to use our land this way.
And this, we can say it, this was the proposal to put a Sheetz there at the intersection of Monroe and Secor.
Correct.
Yeah. And
people need to know that we just saw the results of a drugstore war. Rite Aid is done. Walgreens and CVS, I'm told, are threatened by the idea that everybody does Amazon types of things. They need to know that Sheetz told us at the neighborhood meeting, their biggest competitor is an outfit called Wawa. It's out of Philadelphia. Sheetz is also out of Pennsylvania from Altoona. And they compete with each other already, and they're definitely entering the Ohio and Michigan markets. But the big guns, the one that is being built as you and I speak in Huber Heights, Ohio, a suburb of Dayton, is Buc-ee's. And that store will be 74,000 square feet. They will have 700 parking spaces and 120 gasoline pumps. So if we wind up with stuff like that, it's unnecessary. When's the last time you had to look for a gas station anywhere in town? You just don't. So it really, this competitiveness from out of town corporations then extracts the wealth of any community that they come to.
Now
go ahead.
You sound, Peggy, very knowledgeable, but the information that you have, that you build your talks and your efforts around, that information is readily available to everybody. You just have to know where to look.
Correct. The internet makes everything, I mean, it has its downsides. You get misinformation, but if I'm going to a government website, that's what the government is saying. So if I go to the Ohio Department of Development, for example, they're telling us, and this connects to the discussion of why expand a highway. The Ohio Department of Development in 2022 projected the population for every single county in the state of Ohio between 2020 and 2050. And what they're projecting for Lucas County is that there will be a 19.5% decline in our population by 2050. So why would we expand highways endlessly if our population is projected to be declining at that pretty extreme? 1/5 of our population in the county will be gone. And so, those types of websites are usually what I read other things that other people have written that are more opinion pieces, but there are some really good researchers on highway out there. One book that I will recommend to your audience is called City Limits. It's just come out this year. It's by Megan Kimball, and she did amazing research on the history of highway construction under the Eisenhower administration. And it was interesting. Eisenhower's plan wasn't to do what they've done in every city, which is put a beltway around every city. That was not what he intended. He proposed the interstate highway system to connect one large city to the next. So connect Cleveland and Toledo, or connect Toledo and Detroit, or Chicago, or whatever direction we were going to go in. It was just meant to connect large cities together. Instead, what we got is interstates that ripped straight through the center of cities and then did beltways all the way around.
Now,
So it taught me that.
when we first talked, Peggy,
Mhm.
you were talking about the effort to stop the proposal to expand I-475 through your West Toledo neighborhood from
Correct.
what, 4 lanes to 6 lanes?
Interesting. It's 4 lanes to 6, except in the segment that's most commercially developed, that intense commercial development. They now have added 2 additional lanes on the segment between Secor and Talmadge. So it will be 8 lanes between Secor and Talmadge, the last that we know, and 6 lanes apparently for the remainder.
Wow. Where do you stand now in your effort to stop that enhancement of I-475?
Well, we've built definitely a coalition of people who are opposed, and they will write letters and they will attend hearings and they attend meetings. We unfortunately had to cancel our last big neighborhood meeting, which was to be held in May, but we are planning another one. The uh, ability to go do that type of research and to communicate what they know to the city members of city council. We have since, I think since I last spoke to you, London, we have gotten support from Mayor Kapsakavich. He supports our efforts to rethink that highway, as does President of Lucas County Commissioners, Pete Gerken. They've both written letters of support for our group. We've also gotten national support for our group from Congress for New Urbanism and another group called America Walks, both of which are trying to rethink highways, rethink how we use our cities, how we make them more friendly and inviting to people for walking and public transit, and all those things that are going to collectively help the planet, help us individually, help us all economically, provide things for people who can ill afford to own a car. Those types of groups are rethinking those. So since I last talked to you, those are some of the successes that we've had. And I'm happy to report that I've saw movement in a discussion that I had with a member of city council last night. And we are not, would not be precedent setting for the city of Toledo at all. In fact, in May of this year, just an hour up the road, Ann Arbor's city council unanimously passed a resolution to stand with the neighborhood groups to stop an MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation, expansion to US 23 on the eastern side of Ann Arbor. So they were, everybody, every DOT wants to expand because that's how they have to use up their budget. So Ann Arbor people stopped it.
The expansion of I-475 would mean houses would be lost?
We don't know for sure. They claim now their original plan said they were going to take 5 really well-kept homes. At an October public meeting that they held, they used 400 words to answer one woman's question who lives in one of the homes. She stood and asked, just tell me yes or no, will my home be taken? And the person who answered her expended 400 words to give her a yes or no answer. So that goes to tell you what somebody, who runs in political circles will do to non-answer, a question that somebody's trying to propose.
Where does
So
the project stand now? Are there any public hearings yet to be had?
there have been no public hearings. And so that's what we've been asking city council to do. Have a hearing. A hearing is different than a meeting. No one is held accountable at a meeting. Anybody can stand up and say anything. No votes are taken. No, ordinances are written. None of that happens. At a hearing, it's on record. People make presentations and they are recorded. If a vote on a particular, let's say an ordinance or a resolution from an official body, they have to take a vote on that. All of that is the facts of a public meeting. I'm sorry, of a public hearing. A public meeting is just, we're going to gather people together and we're going to talk about this. And then when everybody goes away, they can do whatever they want. And that's exactly what ODOT did. So for example, We clamored. They had no neighbors represented on their 82 stakeholders. Many of the stakeholders didn't even know they were on the stakeholders list, but those were the people that were supposed to be having input and planning and whatever, but it wasn't neighbors. It was elected officials, or it was actually 2 members of the Arts Commission were on the stakeholders meeting to plan a highway expansion. Made no sense to us. We want to be a part of that. We want to be a part of that. And eventually, last October at their public meeting, they finally allowed a couple of people to sign on to be a stakeholder. I was one of them. And there has not been a single stakeholders meeting held by ODOT since last October. So it goes to show you just how much they want to do whatever it is that they want to do without including the people who will be most affected.
We are going to continue our discussion with Peggy Daly-Masternak of the I-475 Neighborhoods Coalition next week to gain her insight into the issue of expanding highways. For more information on her grassroots efforts, visit the website 475neighbors.org. That's 475neighbors.org. I'm London Mitchell, hoping you'll join us next week as we continue staying in contact.
Previous episodes of Staying in Contact with London Mitchell are available on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Podbean, the Suite 419 app, and londonmitchell.news.